Good evening, all. Sorry I've got a little bit late start. Thanks for joining us this evening. Great, let's go over to our presentation and we'll begin this meeting. Okay, well, welcome folks. Today's October 8th. I'm Adrian Pelkis, and this is the South Carolina Inventors Forum. I welcome you this evening. Something to note that there have been some major changes. They do affect the small inventor. The first thing to change was they changed from a system of first to invent, where you kept a notebook and witnesses and would use that as the basis of how your idea started. They changed that to first inventor to file. And that changed the way people approach things, with a need to be securing their ideas much more early on and actually even sometimes more often. So the change has become that where people used to come in and talk freely, sometimes now they're a lot more leery and skeptical of opening up and talking without good, at least non-disclosure agreements. So it's become important with the industry now to have actual legal non-disclosure agreements, not just the simplest boilerplate, but something that's actually can be verified. John? Good evening, Doug. Welcome, welcome.
What's up, folks? Y'all doing good?
We are, and glad you can make it and join us. I've just introduced the concept of what the Constitution allowed us as far as patent rights in a broad sense, and you're right here perfectly on time. I'm just going to change this slide.
Now, guys, I've only got 25 minutes, so we're going to feed y'all with a water hose, but I do want y'all to ask questions. And again, with Adrian and Tom, they know how to get a hold of me in a heartbeat. If anybody has a question, call me. If you're after the fact, or if it's 9 o'clock, you're like, crud, I should have asked something, feel free. I love addressing calls on this, guys. Knowing how IP works is probably the best thing you can do for your business. If you don't know about it, ask. You know, Adrian and Tom are there to help you. What I want us to do first is we'll talk about trademarks and copyrights. A couple quick things here. All of you with a company have a trademark, period. You're going to have one. It's there. It's a given. The Lanham Act, federal statute that mainly covers its ambit, is a great thing. But what I want y'all to know is that tonight, when we talk about these forms of intellectual property, they're not mutually exclusive. View them as kind of a Venn diagram to where parts overlap other parts, because what we're looking at here is an entire environment of IP, and we really want this to be something that you guys are well aware of. One thing I want y'all to be extremely mindful of is never lift anything from the internet. And I'm talking documents, I'm talking pictures, I'm talking sound samples. Do not do it. Had a client today. I work with Fostering Great Ideas here in the upstate. And they're an awesome group that works with foster children. And they try to keep siblings connected through some of their trademarks like Sibling. But they're having a fall gala, and they said, hey, we've got a couple songs we want to play. And you're like, how does that tie into any of this IP stuff? But if you go and have a performance, and they're having a gala ball, probably social distance and all that, but if they play songs and do not have a license to play those songs in a public forum, that's copyright infringement. And so that's why I tell everybody to be very, very mindful of what you're doing with this, because I know it's so convenient just to go clip something and put it into a presentation, boom, you're done, or clip it, put it into a maybe a synopsis you're sending out for a project, or maybe on your website. But what I want y'all to know is that is something you should absolutely avoid. If you didn't create it or you don't have a license to it, don't go putting it into your stuff. It is a bad, bad plan. Another thing to worry about is, and again, I say worry, but you know, think of it more as just being concerned about the success of your business. And what I want you to know is that before you go out into the universe with a name, make certain you cleared it. And I have multiple instances where someone will come to me and say, Doug, I want to be XYZ. And we will go check XYZ, and not only is that name not available, but lo and behold, there's somebody very similar to their business. And you know, you kind of pop somebody's balloon when you tell them this. But what we don't want to have happen are two things. We don't want to be accused of trademark infringement, and we don't want to be too closely associated with anybody else. And I know that sounds kind of xenophobic, but what I mean by this is we do not want to, in our industry, have a name so common with somebody else that we can be mistaken for each other. You know, I tell this all the time. Adrian, you're new to this one, so my stories aren't quite as boring as they are for Tom. But we've got, I'm pointing down the road, we literally have a community tap here right at the beginning of Wade Hampton. I'm in Greenville, guys, right downtown right now. But about 3 miles from here, we have this place called Community Tap. There's also one in Nashville. About 7, 8 years ago, the one in Nashville made skunk beer. And of course, everybody jumps on social media, writing with the thumbs, explaining how Community Tap made horrible beer. Problem was, it wasn't the one in Greenville, but there's no way to get folks to discern. And so if you're thinking about a business name, don't try to mimic anybody else. Do your own thing. I realize that's difficult, but I tell you, it is the best way to go with it. Another big thing, if someone works for you, if they're creating logos for you, if they're trying to help you create inventions, Adrian told you guys about the Patent Act and how protection of inventions is essentially sacrosanct in the Constitution. We want to make certain ownership is sacrosanct as well. We don't want a situation to where we have possibly got a logo from someone or we've got an invention from someone and it has not been assigned. If your company, and I do mean company, not you individually, but your LLC, your C Corp, your S Corp, whatever you have as a corporate entity, they need to own your IP. And if someone works for you, they need to assign it to you. Assignments are not something to steal off the internet. I'm definitely going to hammer that point the entire time tonight. But what we want here to happen is we want an understanding of, we need to make certain ownership is done. Because if you're trying to get venture capital, if you're talking to Adrian, if you're talking to Tom, they're going to tell you these folks are going to look in all your drawers. They want to know what's in there, what's in the sock drawer, what's underneath the socks. And if you have not shored up your IP, that's a problem. And worse yet, if someone else owns the IP because you haven't shored it up, lo and behold, you start getting successful, it's going to be a lot harder to capture those assignments from folks. Again, he who hesitates is lost. If you have a trademark or patent idea, guys, you got to move. You cannot wait on this. I know everybody thinks I'll protect it when I make money, but if you're making money by selling it, and if you sell it for more than a year, 35 USC 102 kills that. You've given that to the public. You can never protect it, ever. No matter how neat it is, it might be a fusion reactor. It might be the greatest thing since sliced bread of the will. But if you have been selling it or putting it out in the public knowledge base for more than a year before you file a patent, you're done. You can't be any toasty. Guys, at this point, I know I talk fast. I don't have a lot of time, but I want to see, are there any questions right now from anybody?
I got a question back on your thing there about logos. If you have a company to design it for you, you got some kind of form that you fill out and get them to sign that, yep, it's yours and I'm assigning it to you?
And check, Jeff, is that you speaking?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, great question. What you want to do is to make certain that and go back to your original contract with them, there should be something in there that says, hey, Jeff, you own this. And that's all we want to do is to make certain that you do have that ownership from them. If there isn't anything, then we need an assignment for them to you because their person who created the logo or whatever they made for you, they're an author. That really is a term of art in the copyright industry. And that author owns the rights to it until it's transferred to you. So go back and check your original agreement with them, check under intellectual property or ownership. If it's not in those two paragraphs, we probably need to get you an assignment.
Wish I knew. I wish I knew.
No, I'm just trying to get. Is that the same? Is that true for copyrights as well? I work in the creative industry.
That's what that is. If you got somebody working for you, like, okay, here's how wide copyright is, guys. It's everything from software code to movies. It's audio files, it's sculptures. So Thaddeus, if you've got somebody working for you that is creating content for you, you absolutely, positively want a assignment from them. Now, there is a concept called work for hire.
Okay.
Work for hire, again, requires a written agreement that they are giving to Thaddeus. You may as well just get an assignment with it too, because the actual statutory work for hire categories are crazy things like creating an atlas, creating answers for a standardized test, things that very likely none of us will ever do in our life or the next one. But yeah, Thaddeus, if you've got somebody creating copyright content for you, absolutely, positively, you want to get that ownership sent to you.
I generally create copyright material for other people. So I do the writing for other people.
Yeah, so Thaddeus, they need to get assignments from you. And again, I take it, are you an independent contractor typically, Thaddeus, or what's your business relationship?
Generally, they hire my company, and I produce the material, either the video, the music, or the copy for advertisements, any number of things. And generally, what I have been doing is work for hire if it's something that they need to own.
Yep.
If it's something that I came up with but they want to use, I retain the copyright
Smart man.
and move from there. Okay, just
Smart
making
man.
sure I was doing it right.
Thaddeus, you're a wedding photographer, baby. That is exactly how you do it. That's a good plan.
Thank you.
But no, I mean, y'all, Thaddeus is doing it the right way. If it's something that they need to own, Thaddeus knows, hey, the VIG to pay for that is higher. If it's something they need to license, guess what? Thaddeus can go to multiple parties and keep that same work. He'll give them a license to use it, but he's got the ability to basically capitalize on that same resource multiple times. So Thaddeus, you're doing it great, man. Awesome job.
I want to, if I may, I want to ask a question. One of our inventors was wondering how she was going to be able to protect her IP. She wants to take a picture of something and turn it into a puzzle.
Okay.
And so where does she, what kind of IP protection is she looking for something like that?
That is a great question, Adrian. What you're doing is showing the extreme diversity of the copyright, because let's say she goes outside and snaps a photo of the Greenville skyline or the Columbia skyline or Charleston, and she says, hey, I'm going to make a photo, I'm going to make a puzzle out of this photo. What that is, even though we're taking a picture and making it a puzzle, putting it on heavy cardboard, making it high glossy, then cutting it up into shapes, that is a derivative work of her original copyright. And so what we want to do is, if she's going to make that a puzzle and put it out there, it's worth it for the inventor, or the author in this case, to say, hey, I probably ought to file copyright registration on that. And that's something that I can teach you to do. Tom and I have been talking about putting one of these together for ages to show folks how to do their own copyrights. Because if you're artists, especially like Thaddeus, and you're creating a lot of this stuff, you don't have to go to an attorney every time that you create, or maybe Thaddeus has done it at 3 a.m. It's like, hey, I just want to get this protected now. But Adrian, we can show folks how to do that. But yeah, if she's going to take a picture and make it into a puzzle, that is straight copyright. Now, if she has a cool name for the puzzle, that could be trademarked.
Okay, excellent. That ought to help a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And you guys keep asking again. And you'll notice this last one where we talked about work for hire a little bit with Thaddeus's question and with Adrian as well. You'll see this concept called fair use. Fair use is a tough thing. It is kind of like skiing uphill, because what's going to happen is you're going to have people who are thinking, oh, well, if I'm using it for some purpose that I'm not really making $1 million off of, it's okay to use it. That absolutely is not how it is. If you're using these materials in a business to make money, then it's very likely that fair use does not cover you, that you're in such a situation that you're actually an infringer. And a lot of people say, oh, well, what if I attribute to the source? What if I say I took it from Thaddeus, or I took it from Adrian, or I took it from Dirk, and then I put that on the website, or I took it from Jeff? All you've done then is make it easy for me, the attorney, to say, look, you absolutely took it from my guy because you said it came from him or her. So be very careful thinking that you got the ability to use others' works. You really don't, unless you have a license, like, Thaddeus works out with his clients and say, hey, I, Thaddeus, author, give you the ability to use. If you don't have that particular paperwork, you need to be very careful using any of the copyright formats. And another just key tenet, people think, hey, I did one of these in Greenville a couple weeks ago, was asked an awesome question. One of the ladies said, look, Martin Luther King Jr. is dead. Can I use his stuff? And you would think, oh, wait, if the author's dead, maybe I can use it. But, y'all, copyright is a really notoriously long-lived creature. It is Dr. King's life plus another 70 years. It can actually be 95 if it's a co-work. There's some crazy situations where 120 years are added to it if it's not published. So I want y'all to realize, just because something's old doesn't mean it's there to be had. We need to be very, very careful with that in our businesses. I think I told Tom about this pre-COVID, but one of our local Congress people was trying to show what a particular device looked like in a letter to his constituents. He's like being a good politician, saying, hey, here's some things coming up that we need to be concerned about. Here's a picture of X. What happened was there was actually a photographer who claimed rights to that picture of X, sent him a cease and desist letter, even though it was sent out to his constituents just trying to illustrate literally a point. It wasn't done for a profit motive. It wasn't done in any way to make money. But they, of course, claimed, oh, you're doing it to get contributions, and you're doing it for this, and you're doing it for that. But guys, even if you're a politician trying to communicate a message to people who you're paid to represent, that can still get you in trouble. So understand that copyright is a very hairy beast. We don't want to go poking it with a stick.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting differentiation between the terms between a copyright and a regular patent in terms of length of the patent.
You know, Adrian, I find that to be actually a little bit of a sore point with me because, you know, a fusion reactor is only good for 20 years. You know, design on a fusion reactor is only good for 15. And
Yeah.
yet Walt Disney movies are good for Walt's life plus another 7 decades. There's some problems with there. You see who's got the better lobbying group, you know?
Indeed.
Now, guys, one thing too, I want y'all to be aware of, and Thaddeus, this is a language you speak fluently. You know, when you're using your language for folks, when you're using your agreements and your licenses, or when you're taking those from a third party for things that you use, read them. I know that sounds crazy. I don't like doing it either, and that's what I get paid to do, but read them. Make certain that you know what you can and can't do with these documents. Same with things that you send to other people. Make certain that you know the terms that you use with them with respect to what they can or can't do with your property. Or if it's their property, you'll want to make certain, like I mentioned before, that you've got an assignment showing that it's your property.
Okay.
Self-help for trademark guys, a lot of things to do here. Don't try to do your own. I realize it's an attorney saying hire an attorney to do a trademark. I'm going to say that clearly. Hire an attorney to do your trademark. Fostering Great Ideas, I mentioned earlier, guys, I met them when their owner came in with a stack of trademarks that he filed himself. We were actually having an in-person thing in Greenville about 10 years ago. He stood up the back. I was like, you can do these trademark things. I just filed a dozen of them. What he done, guys, is for Fostering Great Ideas, again, great foster group. They help kids do some awesome things. They're now international, and they really are a fantastic organization, but they're a nonprofit. They don't have a lot of money, but David White, and I've got his permission to throw him under the bus, guys. That's why I do his trademarks for free, so I can keep backing the bus up and over him. But they filed a dozen trademarks, about 225 a piece for a nonprofit. That's a lot of money. Every single one was wrong. And they had filed the class as a foster care agency. I know that sounds nutty. You're thinking, well, they help with foster care. But guys, trademarks are so specific and they can't be amended. Once you file it, you're done. It's carved in stone. If you got something wrong in it and it's enough to be detrimental to your mark, you have to refile the application. Problem with that is, if you find out 6, 7, 8 months down the road, when you refile that application, you lose that initial filing date. So if Adrian's come up with a cool name that's close to yours but not exact, but he filed after your first mark but before your second, he may block you now, even though you would have had the priority with that flawed application. So with your trademarks, guys, make absolutely certain that you talk to somebody before you do them. If you've done them before and you're quite comfortable with it, that's awesome. But if you've not, it's kind of like that old saying, if you don't surf, don't start. Find an attorney. Trademark versus copyright. You know, we had talked about those crazy long years. You know, we're looking at the 70, we're looking at the 95, we're looking at a 120. There's also a renewal. And for things after 1978, they don't have to be renewed, things before it do. So this is very esoteric stuff. But what I do want y'all to know is a big difference. Trademarks can last forever because you're using them in commerce. Think Coca-Cola, think McDonald's. Those are some of the oldest trademarks in life. Think the Superman emblem. Those are trademarks that are universally recognized. As long as they're used in commerce, they're good through infinity, as long as you keep paying your fees at the patent office. For copyrights, they actually do expire at some point. It's horribly long, but they will expire at some point in the future. Sorry. Now, guys, the last thing for this section, and we'll jump over the patents and trade secrets, is I want to hammer back in assignments. You know, if you're Thaddeus, and you're working for somebody, if somebody's working for Thaddeus, he gets an assignment for them. If Thaddeus is doing it for somebody that has to own the materials, he provides them an assignment, and they pay him extra because of that relinquishment of ownership. I want everybody here to understand we have to do that. Again, your licenses, review what you promised to people, review what they promised to you, make certain you understand it. Your NDAs, you know, Adrian and I were joking about these earlier in the week. You know, a lot of people are like, you know, NDAs aren't worth the paper they're printed on, but you know what? It's sort of like Napoleon said, quantity has a quality all its own. If you've got an NDA and somebody screws you, you at least tried. And you can wave that around to a jury with some effect because if you have to go there, you want that ability. Same for a mediator. Be able to say, hey, man, I thought I was dealing with an honest cat. Here's my NDA. Sure, they may have breached it. They may have been snakes, but we have to try on that stuff. And if somebody balks too hard on an NDA, you might not want to be talking to them anyway.
Yeah. Now, Doug, let me ask you something. I've seen so many inventors that just pull something off the internet, and it's a boilerplate, and it does not even include any kind of time provisions. There's no termination dates for it. Isn't that a minimum requirement on an NDA, is to have a time period that it's valid for?
If you want it to be reasonable, Adrian, absolutely. You can't hit somebody with something that says, now until the end of time, this stays in there. You know, put a reasonable thing on, because as an inventor, they should be taking steps to where that NDA isn't necessary beyond a certain time frame. You know, you and I talked about filing provisional applications. That's exactly the best way to protect it. Then you don't have to worry about the NDA. You've got a patent filed with the patent office waiting to mature. So no, that's a great question. You really don't want to just entirely rely upon that. But if you phrase it too broadly, you know, we talk about your agreements with your employees as well. You know, when you talk to them about confidential information or covenants not to compete, those have got to be reasonable. You know, you can't do this the entire U.S. for the rest of the time. It's got to be, hey, 2 or 3 counties around Lexington where I worked with you, don't cherry pick my customers, expires in 18 to 24 months. Yeah. So yeah, we absolutely want to have those reasonable terms. If we don't, we're probably going to get that thing blue penciled in a really bad way, or possibly entirely kicked out.
I've actually found myself actually asking people to say what it is that this whole NDA is about in less 2-3 words, what the subject is, because as a product developer, I can't just endlessly be signing on disclosures that say I'll protect their idea. If that hasn't been named, they could come back later saying, you're doing something that we talked about. Well, that's why I'm asking them now to say in a subject line of what it is that this NDA is even referring to. Is that a good point?
Absolutely a terrific point, Adrian, because if you don't identify it, I mean, you're right. You know, hey, these people can be like, no, we disclosed everything to Adrian. He knew about the gold machine. He knew about the leprechauns. He knew about the rainbows. But if these guys were in there talking about a mousetrap, then guess what? Let's put in the non-disclosure agreement. We're talking about a better mousetrap. We're not talking about leprechauns and rainbows and pots of gold. But if you don't put that in there, Adrian, you're absolutely right. You run the risk of them being able to say they told you all the stuff that was never mentioned. And so, yeah, specificity in a document is a very good thing.
Yeah, and there again is what the mistake a lot of inventors make, is getting those boilerplates off the internet, which again doesn't have defined dates or what the subjects are, a lot of things. It's really not even worth, as we said originally, not worth the paper they're written on.
Yeah, Adrian, you've totally nailed that on the head, because if you don't have that taken care of, and you have this just POS that you hauled off of Google, and y'all, it happens all the time. I mean, I'll have big clients roll in like a Fortune 200 company, and they'll do crazy things like put time limits on a trade secret. And it's like, no. But it's because, oh, we found this good agreement. But you got to read this thing copacetically. And I do mean from first word to last word, and understand it. Because if you don't, that's a bad thing. Like I was reviewing one today. I've got a customer who's working with designs from an artist. So they're working with the Thaddeus, who's going to produce material for them. And they're agreeing what can and can't be done with this. But I noticed down on one of the pieces here, and it was just a very subtle insert from their attorney that said, hey, you know, yeah, we're going to promise you that this doesn't infringe anybody, but we're only going to be liable for what you paid the artist. And if you think about that, yeah, I mean, Adrian, that's exactly it. And they just, they just kind of slide that in. So I told the client, I was like, hell no, do not sign that. You strike it through, put back the original language. Because guys, let's say that we do breach one of Thaddeus's copyrights. You know, he took a picture for us, made a video for us, did he made a music album for us. So Adrian and I are all out there dancing, we're doing our thing. We don't pay Thaddeus, so we go ahead and run with this bad boy. If we do that, we are in trouble. And if we think that we're safe, we're absolutely not. Because what's going to happen is Thaddeus isn't going to just come to us and say, oh, wait, y'all should have paid me, whatever your charge is, Thaddeus, $3 grand to make this thing. Thaddeus is going to come back and say, hey, Doug and Adrian, I really like the way you've used that video. I saw that we were using it to sell your widgets. I'll need the profits from all those widgets that you use that video to help sell. And so there are a lot of ways that these things can get you in a lot of trouble. But this agreement today was like basically, oh, we'll just put it in there that we're liable for what you paid us. And again, her attorney was being a good attorney for her case, but you can't fall for stuff like that. You have to review everything. And guys, it was 5 words. And if I had skipped it and somebody came and sued the client later on, A, they would have skinned me alive. B, they would have been SOL, because even though she promised indemnification, they're only going to pay her like $2,500, $4,000, whatever it's going to be. But I promise you, damages in a copyright lawsuit are going to be much, much higher than that. So again, read everything.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you. Well, we have about 10 minutes left. So what else we want to talk about tonight? You might want to talk about what kind of types of patents are there, and how do you, what the most common one for the provisional is, maybe what we ought to focus on, what most inventors are looking for, or however you'd like to go on about it this, Doug.
Yeah, and guys, one thing that Adrian is talking about, sort of my favorite type of patent, because if you are a small company and if you're here trying to get things set up, then here's what needs to happen. Before we go out, before we go to Clemson, before we go to USC and we start doing it, or before we go out and set up the billboard explaining it, file a provisional application. Cost on these things are low, guys, and they can be varied. Provisionals have sort of different life statuses. We can file what is called a cover sheet. That is a down and dirty. Let's say you're on your way to your presentation. You thought, oh crap, I forgot to take care of anything. I've done this for inventors before, literally in the car. Who'll say, hey, I'm getting ready to drive to Michelin. I forgot to tell you guys that I had this meeting today. We're going to show them everything. We can file what's called a cover sheet provisional, where we protect that information specifically. Like literally, they'll send me a PDF. We'll put a cover sheet on it. We'll draft a couple claims and file it. You can do one of those for $300 to $600. It's not the prettiest thing in the universe, but it's protection. Now,
can that be amended later, or is that can be continued later? Or what's the?
Absolutely. What happens with the provisional, guys? Think of it as a bookmark that lasts a year. So let's say we're on the way to Michelin. Somebody calls Adrian and says, Adrian, holy crap, I forgot to tell you, I've got this disclosure I'm getting ready to give in like an hour. I've got to have my patent filed. So we file a cover sheet provision. Now what that means is everything that's disclosed in that information with claims on the back of it is now considered a patent application. Provisionals only last a year. They never publish. So obviously the person going to Michelin talking about it, that's a publication. It's making it to the public. But we're going to file that provisional before it happens. So that's not a fatal one, and it doesn't start to trigger 35 USC 102 because we already filed an application. But what happens is at the end of that year, we will take that cover sheet provisional and we will take and make that into a utility. And that's the big boy patent. That's the one that's before an examiner. That's the one that's going to be haggled over. That's the one that hopefully eventually comes out with claims. But it will mature from that cover sheet, and we can take within reasonable limits and add to it. Let's say that there was A, B, and C disclosed in our cover sheet provisional. A, B, and C can be expanded upon. They can be explained. They can be shown in diagrams. They can really be fleshed out. Now, if you bring in a D, E, and F, if they're really closely related to A, B, and C, that may be fine. But if D, E, and F are brand new, we may want to have a discussion about, hey, maybe they should be split out in their own provisional instead of forced into this utility, because they wouldn't have that same priority date. The reason we do this is twofold. We protect ourselves from disclosures. We file early at the patent office, because if we don't do that, we run the risk of someone beating us to the office, or worse yet, somebody could steal it. Like if you're at that Michelin meeting and you didn't call Adrian and say, Adrian, file this, what if they decide they like it? And what if they beat you to the patent office? Well, now we've got a derivation proceeding, and that becomes a he said, she said of who did what, who did this. We don't want to get into those. A simple caution. Go ahead, Adrian. I'm sorry.
No, I'm actually agreeing with you. Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for telling me. Yes, those provisionals are for 1 year. A lot of times, Doug, we find inventors to get actually all concerned because that year just goes by faster than they'd ever imagine. And they're into that term and they're wondering, all right, now what do I do? What do I do? Well, what do they do?
A lot of options on that. Let's say R&D stalled. Let's say R&D has not been favorable. We can always file a serial provisional. And that means we'll file a new provisional, probably going to have some new stuff to it. But what we can do is we file it. Now, we lose that year priority. The original provisional just disappears. It never publishes. It's never known to anyone. But that date, that year-long bookmark it had for us is now gone. But we file a new one to get another one. And the reason we would do that, and guys, this happens a lot in industry, things just aren't working. You're in the lab and you're trying to get the polymers to behave some way and they're just not doing it. And you're like, this is useless. I can't file this as a patent because I don't have results yet. I definitely don't have something that I can market. And so for us, what we want to do is to make certain that we don't panic, that we understand, hey, if this thing's not ready to become a utility, we've got options. We can look at filing another provisional. Let's make certain we didn't do any public disclosures or anything that might harm us. Another thing we can do too, we can file what is called a continuation in part, meaning that we would take the provisional, convert it to a utility, continue our R&D while that initial one is now at the patent office walking up the trail. We may come up with new results. And so what we can do is file a continuation in part to where we will take the new results and sort of tack them on to the one that became a utility. So there are a lot of ways to skin these cats. And
there's another method actually I actually used this where I filed the provisional here in the US, and at the end of it, we still weren't ready to take off. We actually converted it to a PCT.
Yep.
The PCT let us bridge a whole lot more months, and then at the end of the PCT, then we had to decide what country, and then we reverted back to going to the US. But that bought us, what is the PCT now, 18 months or 30 something months?
Excellent question, guys. And what we're talking about here, I know we're throwing acronyms at you, but it's patent, cooperation treaty. The closest thing we have to a universal patent, and we don't have one, so don't take it that way. But what Adrian's guys did was said, hey, we got a provisional. And at the end of that year, maybe we still don't know where our market's going to be. We think we're going to be big in Japan. We think we're going to be big in Europe. But if you file the PCT at the end of that provisional stage, now the fees are expensive. It's a $4,500 fine fee just to play that game. So we need to be really certain that we're going overseas into a market. But once you file, you've got another 18 months beyond the 12 months in that provisional, meaning that we don't have to go to China, we don't have to go to Europe, we don't have to go to Japan until 18 months later. And that gives us time to say, hey, are we getting market purchase? Are we selling? If so, where? And it may turn out that Canada and Mexico are the places we want to go. But with that PCT sitting there, we can delay that decision and delay those costs for a year and a half. And that's post the provisional year.
Doug, this is John Calvert. I used to work at the patent office, so I got a couple questions. I'm going to go back to the provisional situation. You said something that really caught my eye, and I've always talked to inventors when I was at the office and told them that they need to file claims with the provisional, even though they're not required.
Yes.
And the other thing is, you're talking about serial provisionals, and sometimes it's good to file one early, just a cover sheet provisional, and then add to it, keeping that original filing date, but adding more things to it, and then file in that 1 year period. Can you explain those two things, why it's good for those?
Now, the first one's about claims, guys. And John, that's awesome. You worked at the office, man. How long were you there?
Almost 25 years.
Fantastic. Did you work out of Alexandria, or where were you at?
I was in Alexandria. I ended up working for the commissioner.
Awesome, man. Very cool. But y'all, you're lucky to have John on this call, because trust me, he's forgotten more than I'll ever know about patents. But what he wants us to understand is when we file this provisional, let's put some claims in it. And that's important for Adrian's method of the PCT, because you can file a provisional with no claims in it. That's okay in the US, but the problem can be with our European cousins. If you try to go into Europe or someplace else, they may say, no, there are no claims filed with this. There's an enablement issue. We don't know what your invention is. It sounds like you don't either, because you didn't draft claims. So if you're filing that provisional, you absolutely put some claims in it to make certain they're covered. Now, another thing John talked about was the tag-along process. We're on the way to Michelin. We forgot. We call Adrian. We follow up that Friday. We go present. Everything's okay. But guess what? Let's say the R&D comes out 2 weeks later and we got a new widget, or the polymer's starting to behave right. We're starting to see experimental data. We can file another provision. And lo and behold, a month later, let's say the polymer's now well behaving, and all of a sudden we got the thermal point right, melting point's where we want it. We can actually file yet another provisional. And just like John said, during that year, we can have a utility that can claim back to all those guys, back to that original cover sheet, and back to that one that was filed a week later, the one filed a month later, the one filed 6 months later. So your priority chain, and John and I can bore you talking about application data sheets all night, but it's essentially your bibliography for a patent. And you say, hey, here's my oldest relative, but here are all my other relatives that I can claim back to. And John, that's an awesome point, because with developing R&D or the Eureka R&D where something actually snaps fast, you want to do that. That's a good point.
Excellent point. Well, Doug, I know we could have a much longer discussion about all of this, of course.
Man, it's Thursday night. You guys go have a beer. It was great talking to y'all.
Well, we've got a second round here. We've got a second speaker tonight, another gentleman who's pretty well versed on these issues. It'll be Warren Tuttle joining us tonight to talk about the USPTO's program to double the number of inventors in the United States by helping minority and women inventors. And so we're really looking forward to hearing that. Doug, a fantastic overview. I think we're going to obviously have to have some more conversations because we only did a few topics tonight, but there were really key ones. You had some really great answers, and I know we've got your contact information for anybody who wants to follow through even closer. So again, appreciate it very much. Warren, good evening. Thanks for joining, and we'll bring you on live here in just a few minutes, okay? I'm really happy this evening to introduce our next speaker. It's Warren Tuttle. He's president of the United Inventors Association. Warren has a fantastic career in developing products for market with especially open innovation companies. And he's been very involved with the patent office and a great champion for inventors and helps inventor clubs. Tonight he's going to be speaking about this new council for expanding American innovation. And it's really my honor and privilege to introduce you guys and all you folks to our speaker tonight, Warren Tuttle. So,
Adrian, thanks for the kind remarks. And you guys in South Carolina are so lucky to get Adrian to move in from the West Coast, where he started one of the best inventor clubs in America in San Diego. And I was out there many times. And one of them was great because I remember Adrian once finishing the hardware show, jumping on a plane, flying out, getting off the plane and running over to speak at your group. That was back before Zoom, right?
Yeah.
But he's bringing just a wealth of knowledge and what he's learned in Southern California to help you guys. And he's also on the national scene very much, was a board member of the UIA for many years and very much an advocate for inventor rights in Washington, D.C., and very involved with some friends of ours who have really worked hard to try to make sure America keeps its eye on inventors. And quite frankly, it's a challenging time right now for many reasons. It's challenging because a lot of big corporations, especially tech corporations, appear to be doing all they can to weaken a traditional U.S. patent system for their own personal gain. And they are very big, some of these companies. Some of them are bigger than small countries. And they have the resources and the power and to come in and the lobby teams, and they're quite powerful. And Adrian's been on the front lines of that to try to remind people that the patent system was put in place to protect small inventors and individuals. And without that type of protection, it's a trade-off, which you just heard about, I'm sure, for the last hour from a patent attorney. It's a trade-off in America. It's been happening since 1792. You develop something on your own, and if you go through a rigorous process, are allowed to own property, which then supposedly you have protection rights for 20 years, and then the return for that is then you turn it over to America. That's the deal. And unfortunately, these large corporations, who, by the way, I don't want to get too fired up here, Adrian, but by the way, these guys all started with patents only like 20 years ago. Okay, so they were, yeah, in the garage, exactly. They were. I mean, Facebook only started like 14 years ago. I mean, they were the beneficiaries of the patent system and the algorithms and protection, and they raised capital around their property and all of that good stuff. And now that they're incredibly powerful, they want to come back, and I call it classic America. They want to go up in the tree fort and then pull the ladder up and not let anybody else in. Okay, yeah. Girls allowed type of thing. So it's something that we have to, obviously on many fronts in America, have to stay vigilant about. And I understand that America has other really important issues today. You know, with the race, with COVID, with race and racial issues, with COVID, with the economy, with China, everything, you know, these are all front burner issues. So sometimes people forget that where innovation comes from. So people aren't always listening to us. And Adrian does a great job. Some of the folks he's close to try to do what they can to keep the, you know, front burner. So thank you, Adrian, for all of that help.
Thank you.
And Inventors also, I have a book coming out called Inventor Confidential. A shameless plug here, but it doesn't launch until March of 2021 because of COVID. It got pushed back, but its publisher is HarperCollins, and it's called Inventor Confidential. You can go on Amazon and pre-order if you'd like. But the other half of this, and Adrian, I talk a lot about that stuff in the book, but the other half is we have a bit of a battle for, I don't know, in my opinion, maybe I take this too seriously, but for the heart and soul of inventors too, in terms of what is an inventor. You know, a lot can be learned from folks like Adrian and the old school inventors that have spent a career doing this stuff and dotting their I's and crossing their T's and doing the hard work and the research and all the things necessary to develop the type of intellectual property that's sustainable and helps America and the world for that matter. Again, there are elements that have, in my opinion, have come and dumbed that down. Now you can just have an idea, sketch it on a napkin, send in 50 of them, you know, blah, 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 blah. So you can read what I think about that in my book. I won't get sidetracked in that tonight, but it's a different, it's almost more being, you know, an idea generator. We all have ideas. Some people have more than others, but unless you do something with them and put the hard work into it, you know, it's just, I always say, I sit on the other side, and I'll give you my background. Sending an idea into a company is like writing a letter to Santa Claus, in my opinion. And I have the facts to back it up. So anyway.
No,
so,
that's a very good point. And
Yeah.
I actually like to use a definition to say that if somebody's an engineer or an artist, they're creator. And maybe they create things and they do it all day long. But even according to our patent system, it isn't until they actually file some IP that then they can actually be called an inventor. So then if they acquire it, can have that patent. They've achieved being an inventor, but they still are not an entrepreneur. That's a whole nother level. So we've got different levels of inventorness that sometimes people get confused with.
For sure. And just focusing on the inventor portion of that, of what you just said, yeah, it's filing for a patent, but it's also folks doing a good job, you know, and the better job you do, and the more effort and time you put into it, the greater reward. And I can just tell you, I sit on the other end of this. So let me tell you what I do quickly and how I get into it, and then we'll talk about the NCAI. So I run open innovation programs. Basically what that means is I help several companies, big companies, to take ideas, not ideas, really more than ideas, products from outside of the company. And I help identify products, I help vet them, and then I help negotiate licensing deals on behalf of the company. My model is unique. I spent many years working on it before I unveiled it. I spent many years from 2005 to 2008 joining my local inventor club in Connecticut, listening to inventor stories, going to trade shows. I researched every model out there, from all the invention submission companies to the coaches to everything. And I had determined, because I had a couple of hits, which I'll describe in a second, that I did not want to take money from inventors. And I'll tell you why. I started off in retailing. I was a pretty successful merchant at a department store in New York City, and then I started my own collection of stores called the Complete Kitchen and Good Food Store in Connecticut. I had 65 employees at one time. I had, you know, multi-million-dollar business. My business partner was Paul Newman, the actor. For a while, I knew Julia Child, you know, so I was kind of rumbling and tumbling, and you know, had this little empire. And one day an inventor walked into the store, and his name was Tom Risch. And he invented a product called Misto, the olive oil sprayer. And I had never met an inventor before. This was September of 1997. I was very good at finding products. I had launched in my stores. I was the first store in America to carry the Nespresso coffee machine, the first store to carry the Donbia ice cream maker, the Burton stovetop grill, many, many, many products. I was very good at finding products. I was really good at ferreting out new products and bringing them in and launching them and marketing them out, and I loved it. It was my favorite part of being a buyer. But this was an inventor that walked in. And basically Misto, you take the cap off, you fill it with olive oil, and then you pressurize it by pumping the cap, and you could spray olive oil. He had designed a special nozzle that could dispense the heavy weight of oil. That's really what made it tick. And now you didn't have to buy PAM. And nothing wrong with PAM in case they're listening in tonight, but PAM does use a butane fuel to fire it, which is not good around flames, not good for the ozone. And then when you finish with PAM, by the way, the PAM, the quality, it's like a low-grade oil with preservatives in it. And then when you're done with PAM, you throw the container in the landfill, and there's enough cans of PAM sold every year to circumnavigate the globe. So Tom kind of hit it on all cylinders with this. And he came in and he was an inventor, and he had shown the product to about 20 people, and nobody got it. Most of them were men. They didn't cook. They didn't get it. They didn't understand. And he came into the store one day and he said, "What do you think of this?" And I said, "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen ever. And I don't know what inventors do, but I'll take 100 of them right now." And he said, "I haven't even built it. It's a prototype." That's the first time I ever heard the word prototype. I didn't even know what a prototype was. So I've learned a lot over the last 25 years. So we worked together. I counseled him a lot. We started making the product in Connecticut. He set up, he built all the tooling himself. He was very good with his hands and building things. And we set up in a fulfillment center about 30 miles from where I was, a whole assembly line, and started making Mistos. And I started selling them 12 at a time in my store, literally myself, the first week. I'd go out, I'd pitch it, I'd go, "Have you heard about the new Misto?" And every customer would stop. "No." And, "Well, you don't have to use PAM anymore." And then I had them, I owned them. You know, it was 1995. I sold the first couple hundred myself just to get the pitch down and to figure it out. And I then was very helpful to Tom to get an article with Florence Fabricant in the New York Times, which time about over 2,000 orders came in over 2 days. We had to put in extra telephone lines and everything. And then I knew we were off to the races. And it was an amazing success story. Eventually, I got all the gourmet stores in the Northeast to take it in. They started selling it. And then I went to Bloomingdale's, and they bought 10,000 on the spot. And the rest was history. We sold 1.2 million Mistos the first year we were in business, first full year. And we made a big profit. And I had never experienced anything like that in my entire life. So Adrian, to your point before, we went from intellectual property and inventions to actually being entrepreneurs. and Tom needed me, and I needed Tom, but it was Tom's company, you know, and I was there. I still had my stores and all, but I was very helpful, and my life changed entirely. I then was opened up to the beauty of, you know, inventions and all that. Now, it was a little bit different era in the late 90s, but we had a great run. And after a couple of years, I sold all my stores, and I decided I was going to start helping inventors. So then my next product was a saucepan stirring device that I got very involved in developing with an engineer. And it was wonderful. It folded up to the size of a coffee cup. And when you unfolded it, you could put it over a pot and it would stir automatically. So you could do soups and pastas and risottos. And we took it to the 2004 Houseware Show, and it was the #1 new product in the country. And we were on Good Morning America. We sold 110,000 pieces the first day at the show. And I thought I was going to be rich. Unfortunately, the product didn't sell. We didn't do enough marketplace testing. We didn't really understand our consumer. And it was a total disaster. And I lost all the money I made on Misto and more. And my wife was not happy with me. And I put my family at risk. And by the way, I put my family at risk earlier in life as an entrepreneur, owning my stores earlier in my life. So it's the second time I put my family. So for those of you who know what I'm talking about when I say I put my family at risk, and that's more than just a statement, it's an emotion. And fortunately, thank God, a gentleman came along after my disaster, and I spent 9 months in a warehouse clearing out all the stock on Stir Chef and all the problems with that. Cleaned up my mess as best I could, made my partner whole. Several people in the company left and we never saw them again. I felt I had an obligation. 9 months, Adrian. I know we don't know each other that well, but every day I labored, Saturdays and Sundays, to clean up that mess as much as I could. And I kept getting this call from this inventor saying, I have this inventor, it's called SmartSpin. And I kept saying, I can't help you right now because I'm cleaning up this other mess. And when I finish the other mess, I'll call you back. And he kept saying, could someone else help me? I said, I don't know who to send you to. I don't know where to go or anything. Fortunately, he waited, thank God. I finally got out of prison. I met him in Boston, Massachusetts. The product called SmartSpin, you can look it up on the internet. I basically, the quick story is, loved it, helped him finish his development, helped him make its consumer ready, added value to it there, and then we took that product out through TV and we sold over 10 million of them. And so
Wow.
I was back in business. And so I came within a heartbeat, you know, of just a total disaster. So I know what it's like. I know what it's like. And that's Adrian and everybody. That's why I do what I do. And that's why I wrote the book, because I don't forget one day, you know, where I came from and what it's like and what disaster looks like. And life is not all about money, you know, but when you get on the wrong side of it, it can really burn you in a bad way. So that was it pulled me back on the street. I worked on a couple of other products, the toss and turn pan, which is the #1 selling fry pan in America one year. I had a few other things going on. And then one day, the folks from Lifetime Brands, I was at a trade show, and the chairman of the company, and Lifetime Brands is the largest non-electric housewares company in America. It's on NASDAQ under LCUT, LCUT. It's $1 billion housewares company. And one day the chairman, when I came by, he said, listen, I know you did Misto and I know you did, you know, these other products. He said, we're trying to reach out. They had just had a course from Blue Ocean Strategy, how to reach out into new arenas. He said, we want to set up an open innovation program. Would you come and work for us? And I said, I absolutely will not work for you because I don't ever want to work for anyone, but I will help you and consult you. And that was 15 years ago. And I came on as an outside contractor. So I run their open innovation program. I'm in an unusual spot that outside the company, I can vet things that they can't. I can operate on my own. I can talk freely to you guys. You guys can tell me your issues. I'll keep them confidential from the company. And then I've now done that for almost 15 years. We've brought in almost $200 million in business, and I've done 125 licensing deals with them.
Warren, what are the companies that Lifetime Brands is? What companies are included with Lifetime Brands?
Well, we own 40. We either own or license, Adrian, 40 brand names. The biggest is Farberware. So when you see Farberware, cutlery and gadgets and all that, that's all ours. But we also license the name KitchenAid. So when you see KitchenAid on many, many products, they're ours. We own Sabatier cutlery. We own Tal Silver. We own Mikasa. We own, it's a lot of companies. But if you look up under Lifetime Brands on our website, you get a little better feel. It's lifetimebrands.com. And we, at the Houseware Show, we are the single largest booth and company at the show. You know?
Fantastic. Then you're also involved with tools, power tools. And stuff.
Yeah, well, for many years, Adrian, that just absolutely is coming to an end right now. But I did Tektronix Industries for almost 8 years. So they heard me talking about Lifetime once, and they asked me, would you run ours? And they were Ryobi and rigid power tools. The only challenge there was the Milwaukee division didn't take any outside ideas. And my buddies who hired me left the company, and they brought in the Milwaukee team. So now nobody at TTI takes any outside ideas anymore, which is kind of frustrating because even when I want to send them to them, but it was a good run. I had a lot of good hits. I did the Cool Towels, the fabric that you could moisten and it turns to 55 degrees and keeps you cool. We did a lot of business with that. I had many other hits there. So, and then I help a direct response television company called Merchant Media. And so they're the company that helped me with SmartSpin years ago. We have a big hit right now called True Touch. They're gloves that you put on and you can pet your dog and groom your dog. We've sold about 4 million of those now. And so if you go on my website, Tuttle Innovation, it's very simple, TuttleInnovation.com, you can see a little bit about what I do. And those people that are on the website, the first picture is the Home Depot management team, of which my friend Ted Decker, who's the senior, was the senior merchandise manager He was just named the president of Home Depot last Friday.
Wonderful.
So it's been a fun ride, getting to know a lot of people like Adrian and other amazing people around the country. Ted is one of the most innovative, creative management leaders in the country. And Home Depot did $110 billion in business last year. And this year, their business is up 25%. So it's pretty cool. So that's a little, just a touch of my background. I have a classic training. I was formally trained in New York City as a buyer. I was in my own business for a long time. I don't take shortcuts. I work ridiculously hard. I work most weekends. I don't see it as work. To me, it's fun. I love every minute of this. This is not work tonight, Adrian. This is fun. And but I'm committed to, at our age, to try to teach people and younger people to do things right way. Don't take shortcuts and don't fall for any of this BS about everything's simple and easy, because it's not. It's really not.
Exactly.
These 4-hour work weeks and stuff, you know, I mean, you know what? Some people are born rich and God bless them, but I don't know any of them. You know, I don't, it's not, you know, I didn't inherit it. So anyway, having said all that, I've gotten very involved, as Adrian's known. I got involved with the United Inventors Association in 2007 as an extension of trying to learn more about the inventor industry, and got more and more involved in my local club in Connecticut, like your club in South Carolina, and eventually was asked to be on the national, you know, United Inventors Association board. And then unbelievably in 2009, they asked me if I'd be the president, and somehow I've been the president ever since. Now, you know how this works, Adrian, you know, in there. But frankly, it's hard to run. We're a nonprofit, 501c3 nonprofit. We do have a fantastic board. You can go on our website, uiausa.org. They're all wonderful people. They all have busy lives. And quite frankly, somebody has to get in and do a lot of the work, you know, in the engine room. We have a couple of phenomenal people that help us there, Deb Hess and Kathy Kierick. Kathy used to be John's partner, John Calvert's partner at the USPTO. They're unbelievable women, unbelievable people. But I kind of, you know, and every time I try to hand it off to somebody, I don't get the sense they're really committed to it. And if you're not committed to it, the organization will cease to exist. And I just don't want to let it go, because we're the only real national 501c3 nonprofit. So we're different than US Inventor, in that US Inventor is a little bit more of an advocate. As a 501c4, US Inventor is allowed to lobby.
Yeah.
We love what they do. We support everything they do. We're more of an educational foundation. And that's kind of, we can advocate, but we can't lobby. So that's kind of where the line is. So we try to be supportive of all those efforts. We also are trying to do a lot with the Inventor Club community and all the Inventor Club leaders. We just had an event last week with 40 people. And so this is how I got involved with the US Patent Office. And this is how I met John Calvert. And I met the previous director of the Patent Office, Dave Capos. Yeah. And I got very involved in it. I've gotten to know Andre Yankov quite well. And I've been to the issuing the 10 millionth patent at Mount Vernon, and I went to the White House when I did all these various things. So anyway, blah, 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 blah. But it's wonderful because they keep asking me to do more things. So I'm on the National Pro Bono Patent Commission. That's an opportunity for people who are at or near the poverty line to apply for patents and have them paid for. We've set up a hub around the country with Jim Patterson, who you know, of course, Adrian, and it's a really wonderful organization that helps people. So along the way, I've been a fierce, I wouldn't say fierce. Yeah, I would say fierce. I don't know how much influence I, but look, if you're going to have a strong patent system and you're going to, intellectual property is important and property rights are important, then everybody in America needs to have access to them. I mean, everybody, not just some people and not just rich people. It has to be grassroots people. It has to be minorities. It has to be women. It has to be members of our military. It has to be rural folks. It has to be all those people that get excluded. So when they called me last spring from the Patent Office and said, we're starting this new council, the National Council on the Empowerment of American Innovation, I was honored to be asked to be part of it and represent the inventor community. But the mission of it is the theory is right now, we're only running on about 25% of capacity in America. Wow. You know, and let's face it, you know, a lot of traditional inventors, you know, have been older, retired, blah, 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 you know, and the idea is to get younger and to get more diverse and to bring in a lot of folks. And so this just really, I mean, I have enough things to do, but I said, they didn't even finish the sentence. I said, I am all in. And I was very involved with supporting Quirky, who did a lot of women's initiatives. Only 8% of all patents are owned by women.
Yeah.
A lot of women have not gone into STEM training and a lot of engineering backgrounds. That there's a desire to want to change that. So I was very involved in that. I'm very involved. I know Dale Dougherty. Do you know Dale? Adrian, Dale Dougherty, founder of the Maker.
We were discussing this earlier. Yeah, he was the founder. Go ahead.
Founder of the Maker Movement, Make Magazine. Another great. My 28-year-old daughter is a member of the Makerspace in New Haven. Goes there almost every night. You know, goes, Daddy, you got to come and talk to these people. You know, up here. So makers and makerspaces, Make 40, all these things are, you know, sort of adjunct to the inventor world and all this. So it was pretty cool. So the mission statement is basically to get what I said before: minorities, women, military. That's, you know, the key focus. Re-engaged or engaged for the first time, and tear down these barriers for it. And then they tapped 27 people to be on the council. So Adrian, you'll love this. There's 27 people on the council, and there's about another 100 people behind it. It's actually a Department of Commerce initiative. Wilbur Ross is actually the chairman of it, and Director Yanku is one of the directors. And I think it's Director Yanku is probably, you know, the driving force, but it's definitely a Wilbur Ross. You know, he was on our first call. So these people who are on have like employees and associates, and they're all doing a lot of the background work. So I'm both on the council, and then I signed up for all the 3 committees to be on the background work too. So I'm probably the only council member that's also down in the ground, rolling up my sleeves, doing the grunt labor on the ground and going to all those meetings as well. But what's really cool is I didn't really ever look at the list of the people that were on the council. I mean, I've got enough things to do like you guys do. I'm like Thaddeus, you know, he's got his day job, his night job, his, you know, sideline, and he's starting Nickelodeon. This is what we all do as entrepreneurs, you know. And they invited me on a prep call and 2 weeks ago, and I swear to God, I had my surf shirt on underneath. And I was just running around, and the meeting was starting in 1 minute on Zoom or whatever, WebEx. And I almost wore my surf because I thought it was just a bunch of people like me and we could all be in our sweats and all. But for some reason, the last minute, I put on my shirt. I didn't have my jacket on, and I got on the call. Well, we started talking, and I had a couple questions, which I asked. I said, Warren Tuttle from United Inventors Association, blah, blah. The next person after me said, this is Mary Barron. I'm the CEO of General Motors.
Yeah.
And I go, holy crap, who is on this commission? You know, exactly. And it turns out that it's the chairman of Oracle, the chairman of IBM, the chairmans. I mean, not the executive, the chairmans, okay? 3M, right down the line, Qualcomm. It's the president of, I believe it's Southern Methodist University, or no, Texas A&M, I'm sorry, Iowa State, Howard University. It's the head of the Small Business Administration. It's Dean Kamen. Okay, so everybody on this, I do not have any clue in the world how I got tapped to be on the council. But except that someone has to speak up for the inventor community. So we had our first meeting. I've had many background meetings. The first thing is to identify ways that we can get people more involved, and then ways that we can educate them, and then what does success look like? That's kind of what we're determining on the numbers. And the whole effort is to try to tap into the education system, to try to tap into the Small Business Administration, to tap into the inventor community, to tap into the patent legals, all these various, and get the word out to kind of get, and we're right now collecting information to make the report. I will just say to you that at the first meeting, it lasted almost 4 hours last Monday, a week ago, and every CEO got on and spoke eloquently about the need for this and the importance of it. They're a little more interested, Adrian, in STEM education and getting kids involved in STEM education. I'm sure that they need employees, and they'd like to get more people trained, and I think they would love to hire women, minorities, and all types of people to diversify their companies, and I think that's important. I was a little bit more like, I'm already grown up. We already have people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. How can we get them involved? So I actually raised my hand and spoke eloquently about that. And then I also pointed out to them that the companies that were involved, like IBM, 3M, are old line companies that believe in the patent system. IBM had 9,300 patents issued last year. making it the #1 entity in America. So they believe in the patent system and fairness. And I said, not all companies feel like this, and I'm not going to name them, but we have to be very wary of that. So we went on in the meeting, and a number of other people spoke. And then at the end, Director Yanku asked Dean Kamen to speak. And he almost repeated word for word I said. He goes, from 2010 on, there's been a weakening of the patent system, and there's certain companies that are responsible for it. And suddenly he had everybody's attention. So whether I said something that prompted him to say it or he was going to say it on his own, it got it out in front of this group. So I feel like part of my mission is also to be a big mouth and speak up for the inventor community from inside the wall, so they know that, hey, not everybody looks at things the way you do, and there is a problem out there. Right. But I'm happy to be on it. If you guys, my direct email is www.tuttle@yahoo.com. My website's tuttleinnovation.com. If you have thoughts or input or things, I mean, I want to be a liaison to the inventor community to get things back to them, and that's sort of my role here.
Do you think this whole program might lead to a standardized format for clubs, or a new portal, or a way for clubs to be continuously connected back to the USPTO?
Yeah, I think it might. I think it's even bigger, Adrian, than the USPTO. I think it's really Department of Commerce, and I think the report will come out with a Department of Commerce stamp. And I think there's an urgency, but Wilbur Ross, if he said it once, he said it 5 times. This can't just be a report that sits up on the shelf. We got to make it happen, because he basically pleaded why China. He himself said, so whoever says, he himself, the director, Commerce Director, said in his own words that twice as many patents were issued in China last year as America. So I oftentimes say that China is surpassing us and issued patents, and people, that's not true. That's just what you read about. No, that was the head of the Secretary of Commerce said that. So they're very concerned that if we don't start kicking this in, that we're going to get passed around the world if we don't start operating on all sides.
Well, Warren, can we look forward to you to keep us abreast as to what policies are that are going to affect us? And Tom, you had a question? Or you?
Yeah, Warren, it's Tom Ledbetter. I'm here with Adrian.
Hey, Tom.
And I am with Midlands Technical College, one of the 1,360 community colleges in the United States.
Wonderful.
And I want to put a plug in for what you're doing, because the traffic that I see here, just in the middle of South Carolina, people will go to their local community college with an idea.
Yep.
They'll say, I've just invented this. Can I get a prototype done? Can you help me get a drawing done? Have some student work CAD and all these other things. In your thought process, you've got a willing and able group of higher education specialists right there that can help someone help these ladies, help women, help minorities, help Adrian, old white guys like Adrian and me and everything else, move an idea to a market. And we play a critical role. So in your thinking about this, when you talk about, it's one thing to engage education with STEM courses, it's another thing to engage educators in the process of product development.
Yeah, you're so right. It's such an awesome point, and you're so right about the community colleges here. We have Nora Community College near me, and they've really stepped into a void here to practically educate people. Let's face it, if you go to, I wouldn't know, but you go to Yale and, I guess you learn how to read and write. But the community colleges are really teaching functional things, and I know it from my food business and all. So that's a really great point. I'm making a note of that. I'm going to bring that up at our next behind the scenes meeting, because I think that's critical. I think the community colleges are like the inventor clubs. They're really local, and they really, they're really grassroots and important basis.
I haven't shared that yet, but we will in a minute. But this is actually why we're here, is because Tom and Midlands Tech is actually hosting our Inventors Forum.
That's great. It's really good stuff.
We do appreciate the support, and we do see the symbiosis.
Yeah, I'm going to make a point of that, because we don't want to. It's great to educate, to start getting after people who are 12 or 14 or high school, but there are people who are grown that we can still have a lot to offer.
Yeah. Indeed, indeed, indeed. Awesome. Well, it's an exciting time, and I'm happy to hear the government is stepping up and they realize how much greater this country can be if they open up those gates to innovation.
Absolutely.
And congratulations, you just sold another book. I just bought a copy of your book.
Well,
Okay.
What's that book called again?
it's called Inventor. It's my title, Inventor Confidential, and it's the honest guide to profitable inventing. So I talk a lot about, there's two ways to profit. One is to sell more and make more money. The other is to watch your money and don't blow it.
Yeah.
And I know a lot about that.
Indeed.
Congratulations on your career so far and on where you find yourself right now.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you for what you're doing.
Well, again, thank you very much, Warren, and awesome. And it says there are opportunities, and what we want to see, especially here in the Southeast, are more opportunities for women and minorities because they have been underrepresented. It's just time to realize we'd be able to double the number of inventors and innovations and businesses in this country if we just level that playing field. Awesome. Well, thank you, Warren.